Hey, good morning, Justice Warriors. How are you guys? I see we got Squirrely Burger, Caleb Lee, and Liza in the house. Anyone here from Montana? What's up with Montana, Caleb? Anything in particular? Or are you just curious? Um, I think I have a great show for you guys today. I don't want to get your hopes up and then let you down, but want to talk about the Idaho 4 still, as sick of it as I am. And I know that you guys know all the reasons I'm sick of it, but I've got some more reasons to be sick of it. But the reason that I want to talk about it is because, justice, that whole thing, right? Let me just inject right here. Everything I say is simply my opinion, simply for the sake of conversation, hoping to open up a discussion and to be educational and to gain education. And last but not least, it is made specifically for YouTube, which is an entertainment platform. So, hey, Crime Story Diva. Hello from Kentucky. Awesome. Nice to see you. Thanks for stepping in. So, you guys, one of the things that I've been wanting to do, and I've yet to do it, so I'm going to do it this morning, is compare the Idaho 4 case to the Meredith Kercher case. A lot of people don't know Meredith Kercher's case by name, by her name. They know it by her alleged killer, one of her alleged three killers, Amanda Knox, right? That was in Italy 15 years ago, almost 15 years to the day when this happened. So it was November 1st, 2007. And then this, of course, we all know happened November 13th, 2022. So there's a few reasons I want to bring it up. Obviously, I'm looking for parallels, right? So many parallels. There's a few things that I think we've overlooked in this case that I haven't wanted to talk about. Every time I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I should talk about that, but okay. And that's we've encroached the subject of jealousy, but what about like cheating? What about infidelity? What about like shared boyfriends or girlfriends? That crap happens everywhere, especially with younger folks. Usually people sow their wild oats when they're in college, so they don't do that crap when they're having their midlife crisis. Hopefully, right? Fingers crossed. But it's really, really painful at any point in your life. Um, I think it gets more complicated as you get older, especially if you have kids involved. But nobody's mentioned anything about that. We've all been told that there were no essays of any kind, and maybe they weren't. Again, fingers crossed. I really hope that they weren't. I hate that crap. It's absolutely hideous and disgusting. And yet, there's still indicators that this was potentially a sexually motivated crime, right? Um, hey, Pam K and Phantasmic Ether and Pixie Knickers. Good to see you guys. Miss Amir Zaza and Alistair Grant. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Please hit that like button if you don't mind at this early juncture. It's helpful to get the algorithm out. And also, so like, share, subscribe if you haven't yet. And if you are a subscriber, please check and make sure that you're still subscribed, because I think that that thing that was happening a few weeks ago with people losing their subscription upon sharing a video with somebody or to Facebook or something like that. I think that that's still going on. I'm not sure, but it might be. So just please look at that if you don't mind. So, another thing I thought of, you guys, I'm not telling you that I'm a genius, but I once in a while have a genius idea, and I'm like, how did none of us think of this? I literally just thought of this morning, and maybe somebody else has said something about it. So let me know if you've heard this or thought of it yourself. This is crazy, okay? The whole thing with like an alibi. Living alone, you have zero alibi, okay? The criminal defendant lives alone, so there is no way for him to alibi himself unless he had somebody spending the night, unless he was out at an all-night restaurant or something like that. When you're flying solo, that's not an alibi. An alibi is something that can be checked, verified by other sources. So, what I'm saying about that is that anybody who doesn't have an alibi is going to be more suspect than people who do have alibis. So, even if their alibis don't hold up, if they have an alibi and somebody's covering for them and saying, yeah, we were out fishing together or what have you, Jagger. Um, if you have an alibi that sometime down the road doesn't check out anymore, it got you out of a pinch back when you needed it. And then, you just lie your way out of it down the road, right? Anyway, again, I want to reiterate how important it is to me that I am not in any way, shape, or form trying to defend a criminal in any way, shape, or form. Anybody who committed these crimes or any others, especially these heinous unalivings, I do not believe deserves any grace whatsoever. That's just my opinion. I'm a little harsh in that reality. So let's see. Ready to listen to the comparisons. All right, cool, Liza. My dogs won't be speaking to me. My dogs won't be speaking for me. Oh, Squirrely Burger, if only, right? And Alistair Grant says, Jack D must be greedy. He has 3 alibis. Oh my goodness. And thank you for that one, Alistair. And I'm going to start pinning so that I remember to keep pinning. That's a good one. That's a good one. But see, I don't think he had 3 alibis that I know of. He had the 2 alibis. And then there's the stories that Kaylee's parents and family tell that are inconsistent with the photograph and all that, right? So, I mean, I don't know if that counts as an alibi since I don't think he's ever articulated that, or I don't think law enforcement has ever articulated that for him. But I just think there's a lot we don't know with this case. So, let me give you just a brief like thumbnail sketch of the Meredith Kercher case in case you're not aware or there's some aspects that you're not aware. And I want to give a big shout out to my source, which is True Crime Rocket Science. That guy has done so much work on this case in particular. And this case is fascinating to me for a lot of reasons. One of them being that I lived in Seattle when this happened, 2007. Um, I'm trying to think. That was the year that my second child was born. But I was living in the area. I was not so into true crime, but you couldn't help but hear about it worldwide. And then, especially if you lived in Seattle, and then especially that Amanda Knox, and I don't even like saying her name, that she played soccer. Let's just call her Foxy Knoxy. She played soccer for her high school, and I played soccer in high school. I also played at college at Evergreen, and so there was a bit of me kind of being able to identify with her and the way she was portrayed, the way the whole case was portrayed by CNN, who was covering the bills for the entire family for all of their travel back and forth. They really portrayed her as the damsel in distress, the poor all American girl who was just caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that I do not believe is the case. Yes, she has been formally exonerated after serving years in prison. There's so many complexities to the case. One of them being that this is an Italian court, which is nothing like our American judicial system. So in Italy, you're presumed guilty until you can prove yourself innocent, right? So that's an uphill battle. But again, I just want to do a quick thumbnail if I can. So Rudy Guede, Guede, was the person that got sentenced to 16 years and released after 13 years. So he was just released after serving his full sentence 2 years ago, or yeah, a year and a half ago. I think it was like October of 21. Anyway, yeah, it was November of 21. So He is black, and he was probably involved, in my opinion. And we all know that Rafael Solicio, if I'm saying his name correctly, the boyfriend of less than a week of Amanda, of Foxy Noxie, he got sentenced to the same sentencing that Amanda got sentenced to. And they both were exonerated eventually. So they were convicted in '09, the boyfriend and girlfriend, and it was quashed and they were released in 2015. It's a convoluted story. I'm pretty sure they were convicted twice, but again, I would point you over to True Crime Rocket Science. He's got lots of videos on it. He's written books about it. It's pretty fascinating. So again, the quick thumbnail is that Meredith Kercher was a British exchange student. Let me make sure my mouth is working. And they were roommates in a house in Italy. And this town, I didn't write it down, did I? I think it's like it's not Pergoli, something like that. You guys know what it is. That cool Italian, like, university town. Okay, so again, we have a university town. We have a house with many attractive females in it and males. So there were 4 women that lived in the upstairs of the house, and then there were guys that lived in the downstairs of the house. So Foxy Noxie and Meredith had a shared bathroom, so their bedrooms were near each other. And then there were 2 other students that are a little bit older, like 23, and those 2 were about 20. And then the guys that lived downstairs. So uh, Noxie had only been on the lease for maybe a month, and she hadn't been there for most of that month. She'd been on the trains around Europe with her backpack and maybe her sister. So she hadn't been staying there that long. And when she did stay there, she was a party animal. She was living large. She was experimenting with her independence and freedom in the biblical sense. I don't want to do any like SLUT shaming. I just want to look at the reality of she was having fun, and people in town noticed her. She was good looking. She was from the States, and she was hot to trot, let's just say. Okay. She was having a good time. She was a good time girl. She was working in a bar across town. And then Meredith was much lower key, also simply stunning. Again, this is thumbnail. Noxie had a fling maybe with the downstairs neighbor, and they both were musicians. They both played guitars. And then that guy got together with Meredith, and they were like having a relationship kind of thing. And then there was the guy who owned the bar that Noxie worked at, who was kind of not that happy with her work and trying to get Meredith to work. So there was a lot of competition, is what I'm getting at. And when this whole thing first went down, Noxie pointed the finger at the bar owner, and he was a brown person. He was not black. Rudy was very dark skinned. I think he was from Africa. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, it didn't stick with the bar owner, so then she switched it over to Rudy. But essentially, what it seemed happened was a jealousy thing. Amanda was also let go at her job. There was also money issues. This happened on November 1st. Rent was due. Lots of weird stuff. If you guys are familiar with the case, if you're not, I think you would enjoy catching up a little bit with True Crime Rocket Science. I'm missing so many great things. Let me just catch up a little bit so I don't have to go way back. Don Wells has 7. Candace has none. Okay. From my point of view, there's way too many sororities connected in this case. Yeah, I think that the whole Greek freak, what did they call it? Fratlantis is what that area of the campus or off-campus housing was called, where this happened, there in Moscow, Fratlantis. If we look about alibis, then my brain goes full innocent until reasonable doubt. Hey, Justice Warriors. Harsh Reality brought up some crazy articles on sorority sisters. I saw this. Yes, it was good. And I just typed in sorority sister drug online, and a whole list of crimes related to them popped up. In Italy, the garbage dude looks like a god. I saw somebody put up sorority rules number one, that if anything happens, including a death, you must contact sorority sisters to find out how to move forward. I have not heard that, Squirrely Burger, but I believe it. When I went to school at Miami University, there were quite a bit of unalivings. They were all allegedly unalivings by self. And there was total secrecy on the campus, like full blown secrecy. They didn't even put out stats on it. It was bad. That was in 85, 86. And that campus is like 30, at the time, it was 31% of the students were pledges to the sororities and fraternities, which felt like 100%. I was like the only one that wasn't part of it. Okay, there was a live yesterday afternoon. Wondered if shadow banned for saying person on, yeah, maybe. I believe it, girlfriend. You know, it's not going to make me stop. But I definitely think that that is a thing. There was not a live in the afternoon. Thank you, Squirrely Burger. I forgot. I was thinking that I did. Thank you so much. I'm planning one for this afternoon. And again, I don't know because I have a sick kid and other, curveballs. Um, Today I'm planning on doing one. I have it already up as a, premiere announcement. If it has to be later in the day, I'll switch it on the announcement. But thanks for reminding me. No, I did not do my normal afternoon one yesterday, and I missed you guys. But I also just, had to do my mommy stuff. Had to be a mother to my children. I've been doing it for 20 years, almost 21. My oldest birthday is next month, and she'll be 21, a real grown up. Anyway, it is exhausting, isn't it? Thanks again for reminding me. I'm like, yeah, I had my live in the afternoon. I don't know what you're talking about. So rules across the board, as in life, are basically the same. Try and keep things in-house whenever possible. Right. But a lot of times when it's a fatality, it kind of supersedes that, especially again, public safety. Bluestone, hey, I don't recognize your name, Bluestone. Welcome. I'd like to welcome anybody who's new to the channel, and I also would like to welcome all of the returning viewers. So thanks everyone for being here. Let's try to get on this conversation and look at some of the comparisons. True Crime Rocket Science is going to take some time off. He is burned out. He said, I don't blame him. I do not blame him. I mean, when you become that big, and you're such a target, and yeah, it's hard to not let it get to you and not let it get under your skin. But when he did those videos on the Meredith Kercher case, I think he was like completely the opposite of burned out. He was like at the top of his game, and he was really digging it. And every single one of them I thought was phenomenal. No worries, family first. Yes. Does anyone know why K and M dropped their sororities? Dang, Annie Ruler, you are just killing it. No pun intended. You are so spot on. These are questions that we should have been looking into all along. We're just so overwhelmed with so much information and so much gaslighting and this and that and the other thing. The point of calling the sorority first is that the sorority system will protect you and you will get a lawyer. That still does not explain the 8 hours. Wow, Liza, good to know. That makes so much sense. What is Rodney case? You mean Kylie's case? Yeah. Sending prayers and healing vibes for your babe. Yeah, my 15-and-a-half-year-old son has the long COVID, and it's no fun, but it's just one of those things. So I think my mod is texting me, and she's again at work, and she is there, but doesn't want to get herself fired. So we'll just leave it at that. So let me run down my list of things here. But one of the things I want to talk about, I want to get to later, is about Ethan being in the doorway versus Xana being in the doorway of Xana's room. I want to discuss that, but that's a little bit separate here. So The surviving witnesses in this case, we have 2 surviving witnesses. We have Oh, did you guys know that one of those surviving witnesses is not 19, allegedly? Dylan is 21. Remember I had said there were articles that said she was 21? There was one article that said in the same article that she was 19 and that she was 21, and I was just like, "Man, what is going on here?" She graduated high school in 2018, thanks, Sifa, and she was born in 2001. So she's 21 going on 22. Interesting. Why have the police been putting it out there that she's 19? Again, how are we supposed to trust them when they're making giant inaccuracies like that? We don't know if that's intentional or unintentional, but that's pretty big. I mean, again, not just the age, but you're looking at being legally an adult versus not legally an adult, you know? I mean, 18 is one threshold, 21 is another threshold. So, um, again, the situation with Meredith Kercher, she was stabbed 47 times. There was a lot of blood. There was what appeared to be a sexually motivated crime. Noxie had been with her boyfriend over at his house, Raphael. They'd been together for 5 or 6 days, but they were, like, together, like, every minute of it, and she came home in the morning and took a shower and saw a broken window and the door was open and some blood, but she didn't think anything of it, and, just a really shaky story. Um, Essentially, one of the things that True Crime Rocket Science, boils it down to is that what we heard in America was the Americanized version that was really selling us a story. All of the expenses being paid for by CNN is a red flag that they are up to something, right? Like they wanted a great story for their channel. Um, and there was a documentary or a movie about the whole case recently, like I think it was in 2021 when Rudy was released. And it's pretty atrocious. And it's a really bad situation. Meredith Kercher's family still does not feel like they've received justice. And to me, it doesn't look like they've received justice at all. She was a beautiful young lady, a lot to envy. She was in a relationship with this boy downstairs or young man downstairs who was not home that night either. Another parallel. Um, and the two other female roommates in the house, it was kind of like a duplex. So the one upstairs with the females and then the duplex unit downstairs with the males. So it had like separate entrances and separate kitchens and all that stuff. So it was more like a duplex house. But the two 23-year-old roommates were gone. I guess in Italy, Halloween is like huge, and the day after Halloween is even huger. So this happened on the day after Halloween. Um, and so essentially, again, this is all my opinion. Noxie was upset about the hot guy downstairs that she hopped in bed with, as she was having her fun. And then she was jealous of Meredith and him having something more meaningful. So she tried to get something meaningful with this new guy, Rafael. This is my opinion. Again, I'm telling you my opinion. Um, and that poor guy had never had a girlfriend in his life. He was like a total nerd and he thought he hit the jackpot. He was just like, wow, this is amazing. Until that morning when things went sideways. And oh my goodness, I looked up the Wikipedia definition of this whole case and I want to read it to you because it's so inaccurate. She did not call uh, authorities. I don't think ever. I don't think she picked up the phone to call. So So Knox, age 20 at the time of the red rum, called the police after returning to her and Kircher's apartment following a night spent with her boyfriend, Raphael Solicito. I'm not saying that right. And let's just say Raphael. And finding Kircher's bedroom door locked and blood in the bathroom. During the police interrogations that followed, the conduct of which is a matter of dispute, Knox allegedly implicated herself and her employer, Patrick Lumbaba, I think I'm saying that name correctly, in the murder in the red room. Initially, Knox and Raphael and Patrick were all arrested for Kircher's red rum, but Patrick was soon released. In the initial trial, Knox and Raphael were convicted and sentenced to 26 and 25 years in prison, respectively. A known burglar, Rudy Guede, Guede, we'll just call him Rudy, was arrested a short time later following the discovery of his bloodstained fingerprints on Kircher's possessions. He was later found guilty of red rum in a fast track trial and was sentenced to a 30-year prison sentence, later reduced to 16. In December 2020, an Italian court ruled that Rudy could complete his term doing community service. Pre-trial publicity in Italian media, repeated by other media worldwide, portrayed Knox in a negative light, leading to complaints that the prosecution was using character assassination tactics. A guilty verdict of Knox's initial trial and her 26-year sentence caused international controversy. A U.S. forensics expert thought evidence at the crime scene was incompatible with her involvement. I disagree entirely. The knife that was used for the 47 injuries was found allegedly at Raphael's apartment with Knox's fingerprints on it in blood, in Meredith's blood, allegedly. And these are things that we never got in the American news because CNN, and I've always been a CNN supporter, but you can't trust no one. Right? Okay. A prolonged legal process, including and I'll catch up with your chat here in a second. A prolonged legal process, including a successful prosecution appeal against her acquittal at a second level trial, continued after Knox was freed in 2011. On March 27th, 2015, Italy's highest court definitively exonerated Knox and Raphael. However, Knox's conviction for committing defamation against Patrick was upheld by all courts. On January, she was mad at him because he was choosing Meredith over her too, and he let her go because she was a flake, I think. And Meredith was just like much more chill, much more responsible, but she couldn't really commit to covering shifts, and so Knoxie was getting all the shifts, but Patrick was not happy with her, and he let her go the night before this happened. Or at least he told her not to come to work that night, the night that it happened, okay? She was scheduled to work, and he called her when she was at her boyfriend's house and said, "You don't need to come in." And she needed the money. I mean, nothing wrong with needing the money, but she was mad. She had a lot going on. And I'll just say it. She was a spoiled brat, in my humble opinion, okay? Knox is convinced. Okay. On January 14th, 2016, Knoxie was acquitted of defamation for saying she had been struck by a policewoman during the interrogation. So they almost make it sound like she was acquitted of the defamation against Patrick, but that was upheld. But then right after that, they say that she was acquitted. But she was acquitted of the defamation of saying that the policewoman struck her. So she has always been fully convicted of defamation of character for pointing the finger at Patrick. Like I said, she was pissed because he not only let her go, he wanted Meredith. He wanted to like have nobody cover the shift if Meredith couldn't cover it. So And Knox subsequently became an author, an activist, a journalist. She had a baby a couple years ago that just scares me to pieces. Her memoir, Waiting to Be Heard, became a bestseller in 2018. She began hosting the Scarlet Letter Reports, a television series which examined the gendered nature of public shaming. I want to inject my opinion about a lot of this real quick. I always believed the news spin that she got a raw deal. I was very happy for her when she came back to Seattle. I was like, "Ooh, yippee, yahoo. She's free. She's been exonerated, blah, 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 blah." Um, and she has since continuously made her career off of the blood of Meredith Kercher. This, to me, is pathological behavior. If you are involved in something so heinous and then you serve time in prison and then you get exonerated, I would think a healthy, normal person would just want to move forward with their life and leave that in the past. However, all she wants to do is talk about it and play the victim and um, gain people's sympathy. And at first, she had mine because I had always been in that corner, right, in the Noxie corner. And she would come out wearing like light pink Little House on the Prairie outfits with her demure haircut and just really playing it up. And she's a very pretty girl. I'll give her that. She's extremely attractive, which again is something that she uses to manipulate. Let me read some of your comments here because I know I'm missing a lot of them. I'm trying to get to that last one of Annie Ruler because that's where I left off. Okay, there it is. No worries, family first. Does anyone know why K and M dropped their sororities? Such a great question. And then what Liza said, I meant to tag that one too. So let me go ahead and tag that one right there. The point of calling the sorority is to get an attorney, basically, and they'll protect you. Sending prayers about my kid. Then go to the dance as guest of D and B and X Home Alone. Very, very good point, Annie Ruler. I think there's a lot of missing information when you have crimes like this and victimization like this. It's so important to look at the timeline of what happened that day and everybody who was involved. And then looking at the timeline and everybody involved in the victim's lives in the weeks before, right? I mean, that's some of the most pressing information. Some of the other top priority information is your first 24 hours after the crime's committed. First 24 hours is the most precious and important. First 48 is, you know, of the utmost importance too, but that first 24 is even more important. The very first 8 hours, which the closer the time frame is to the crime, the more information is there. And if it takes you a few days to get to the crime, like say in the Kylie Rodney case, it's going to be a lot harder to figure any of that out. So basically, the criminals in this case had an 8-hour head start, right? Because of the delay in calling 911. So that's what I'm trying to get at. And that's something I think that needs to be underscored immensely, that lost time. And then the people who are responsible for that time being lost, I think need to be held accountable. And here, let me show you my cute hat because I sewed all these silly flowers on it. And you're probably wondering, like, what's on her hat? Because it's kind of plain on this side. So there we go. Kind of a grandma kind of thing. Anyway. So yeah, very, very uh that dance, the dance, that is crazy, isn't it? Can we please hit the thumbs up? Justice Warriors, Mrs. Amir Zaza says thank you. And Liza says, I had the long COVID. Tell him be patient with himself. It's not his fault. Long COVID can drive one bananas. Well, fortunately, our doctor has had it too. So she's like fully supportive of him and giving him all the good advice. As far as attack on X in the doorway, likely blood in the doorway, but body elsewhere after struggle, per the affidavit. Right. And I am always going back and rereading the affidavit, but I thought the the corporal that wrote the original affidavit that we saw, that he said that she's on the floor in the bedroom. Am I just assuming on the floor by the door? I thought she was closer to the doorway and that Ethan was further in the room. No such information and disinformation. So much information and disinformation from law enforcement sound familiar? Right. And some of that is typical due to the nature of protecting the integrity of the investigation. So, yeah, they will give misinformation. Um, and that's okay when they feel like they need to do that and they can use their professional discretion. But there's a point where you can't trust anything, like when they say somebody's cleared. Well, all know that that's meaningless, that sometimes they do that just to get the people that they say were cleared to let down their guard, right? Americanized version, I'm so surprised not, right. Yeah, and like I said, I give absolute kudos to True Crime Rocket Scientist for or True Crime Rocket Science for all of his hard work and research on the case. He did a phenomenal job. Caleb Lee says Fatal Attraction, and are you talking about some of like maybe with male female? Are you talking about female female? I don't know, because there's that too, like in the a man again, see, I do it as well in the Meredith Kercher case. um there was probably some, more fluid uh gender sexuality and bisexuality going on there too. So there was evidence of sex crimes with I'm sorry, with Meredith Kercher's remains. She had been sexually assaulted. Her bra was off, I think, completely or maybe partially. It was cut with a knife. Her bra was cut with a knife. I think that her pants and underpants were probably, forgive me for being graphic, and just want to give you a trigger warning, that if I'm remembering accurately, like they were pulled down maybe around her thighs or somewhere in that vicinity. She was definitely sexually uh, assaulted. So, and I think the evidence showed more than one person. So, yeah, the 43 stab wounds. Oh, there was also a big cut on Miss Foxy Noxy. Did you guys know about that? I never knew about that until True Crime Rocket Scientist and his stuff. She had a big cut. I think it was on her neck. I want to say it was over an inch long. You guys, it's crazy. Did anybody in the chat ever hear about that? And I'll get caught up real quick here if I can. It's always challenging. Let me tag that one and do a speed read. So much information, Americanized version, Fatal Attraction. Meredith Kercher was beautiful. She really was. They didn't have very many photos of her, kind of like Ms. Kylie Rodney. And she was not that photogenic. She was absolutely gorgeous. She's in a music video where you can really see her beauty. And I'll put the link to that music video in the description, because it's pretty phenomenal. She's only like 1 second, but you can totally see how amazing she is, and that they hand selected her for that 1 second. So so again, she had musical talents and inclinations also, which was another jealousy factor. HV insomnia for 1.5 years after having COVID. Ugh. Oh, and I don't know, that's not insomnia. I'm not sure what that is, but something for 1.5 years. Yeah, I didn't mean to send my message yet. Sorry, it's messed up. Never trust journalists. Is that what that is? It's so hard in this day and age to trust anybody or anything unless you see it with your own eyes. And sometimes, honestly, even when you see things with your own eyes, you might not really know what you're seeing. And if it's really graphic and traumatic, your mind will play tricks on you. It really will. Sounds like Friends gone wrong again. The press called her Foxy Noxy on every tabloid. That was her own doing. She called herself Foxy Noxy in her journals and in her, MySpace. Remember MySpace? So she had Foxy Noxy MySpace, and then she tried to downplay it and say, "Oh, no, that was just because I was good at soccer when I was little, and that's was just my little soccer thing." No, 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 that was her identity. That was totally her identity. I just can't understand friends not being loyal like they were when my son grew up. Really sad. Harsh, hates true crime rocket science, not just a little. I Googled to see why, nothing came up. I think it was an argument at a crime, something could be wrong, vague memory. Annie Ruler, I know Harsh gets a lot of flack. And this is nothing towards Harsh in general. You guys know I love him. But a lot of the content creators get competitive with each other. And when it's guys, I want to say it's a freaking pissing contest. And they just can't leave each other alone. And, controversy is like publicity. So there's no such thing as bad publicity. But yeah, I know that they've had a thing. I mean, they're both really good. Personally, I have my own favorites, but those change over time too. So I just want to say I think they're both really good. And yeah, I'm glad that True Crime Rocket Science is taking a break. I think everybody needs that. I'm so new at this. I've only been doing it for 5 months, I think now. I think I just passed my 5-month mark and I love it. And, sometimes I'll take a whole 2 days off. And for me, that's all I need if I need a break. I mean, I just love it. Like, I'd rather be doing it than not doing it. So I could see getting to a point where you're burnt out for a variety of reasons, but trolls. And then the whole thing, the back and forth with other content creators, which is why I try so hard not to do that. But the stuff with the misinformation and the disinformation with this person who's tried to inject herself into this case, so much like the person that did that in the Kylie Rodney case, it just pisses me off. Anybody who's going to give her a platform, the person who's doing it in this case, the woman Kim, she says her name is Kim. She says she's from Seattle. She says she has a daughter and a son that go to Wazoo. Whatever. If it's true, keep your mouth shut. And if it's not true, keep your mouth shut. I mean, so any of the content creators that have given her a platform, I'm really upset with because, they're doing it for the fame and fortune. They're like, ooh, I'm going to get this interview with this insider. And maybe they don't realize that they are doing a disservice. Like they think that it's genuine. They think they've done their background check or whatever. But in the end, it's so destructive for the integrity of the case, for the justice of the victims and the families. I'm just pissed as shit. And when I get into that, then I'm like, okay, they'll come at me and whatever, I'll deal with it. But yeah, I think that Harsh and his rivalry, it's like just take it in stride and let go of it. I think that's my opinion, but then I'm not them. They're free to do whatever they want. Um, there's just a lot of jealousy and competition with this whole platform. And, I try really hard to duck out of that, but I know it's sometimes not possible. And when my videos were gaining so much traction so quickly, I was getting some of that. There was that one person that made a video from across the pond about me. And I was just like, ah. And then there was the psychobabble one. And I decided that I wasn't going to pay attention to any of them, that I wasn't going to look at any of them. And if people wanted to tell me about them, that I may or may not allow that because you just don't want to get caught up in it. It's just like rumors in high school, give them something to talk about. You can't stop people. And again, in some sense, you can kind of take it as a compliment, but it's a pain in the butt. I'll just say it. It's an absolute pain in the butt. And I think takes up a lot of time and energy and it sucks the life out of you. And to me, that's probably where a lot of people need to take breaks from this is when they got that kind of stuff going on. Like look at Mr. Ryan Upchurch. He's dealt with a lot of that. Anyway, let's stay on focus here. Just getting here, Sherry Urban says, good morning. I don't know this case. However, the MO seems to be the same. In most of these cases, jealousy, envy, hatred leads to red rum. Caleb, you just said it really well. I think that there's a lot of that. And we all know how sorority sisters can be, and how, people often talked about the Mean Girls thing. I like to talk about that movie Heathers, because to me Mean Girls was a regurgitation of Heathers, and Heathers had Christian Slater and Winona Ryder and some other really good actresses and actors in it, and it was just really graphic. It was like the first, in my experience, it was the first movie of its kind. So it addressed high school students unaliving each other. And that wasn't something that had ever been addressed in a movie. And when I saw it in the 90s, when it first came out, I was like, oh, isn't that funny? I didn't take it seriously at all. I don't think a lot of people did. And in the end, uh, the love interest, the male, he is so devastated over Winona Ryder leaving him that he then tries to blow up the school, or he does blow up the school. It's been a while since I've seen it. But, Christian Slater's character, they're blowing up the school and they're all covered with black. At the very end, they're like lighting each other's cigarettes, and everybody's laughing because that was like way before Columbine, way before things like that were actually happening in our country in real life. So it was kind of like a farce. And then 10 or 20 years later came like the cheerleader murders, where like the mom in Texas killed the cheerleader so that her daughter could get the cheerleader spot, or all those crazy things that just seem to be entirely too often. Okay. Um, and Harsh made it clear True Crime Rocket Science is not British. Oh no, he's not. He is not. He's like in South Africa, I think. Um, LOL, like we care. He is Samaritan, so South African, and author of many books. Right. And I'm really bad with accents. Like anybody who has an accent, I assume that they're British, when often they're like from Australia. There was one real recent, the actor who, Ben Mendelsohn, the guy who plays Danny Rayburn in Bloodline. I said he was a British actor. No, 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 no. He's an Australian actor. And a lot of people know him from playing the bad guy in one of the Star Wars movies. Did I get his name right? Ben Mendelkern or Mendelsohn. He's a great actor. I never knew who he was until that mini series by Netflix called Bloodline. And I talked about it like 4 days ago, and then I looked it up and I was like, why did I say British? He's freaking Australian, but I don't know the difference because I'm just so like all American silliness. It's like, oh, they're not American. They must be British. Come on, get with the program. Lost my sense of smell. Yeah, that's no fun. Sense of smell is so awesome, and sense of taste. So here we go. How the cases compared. So thank you, Liza. That was just where I was going, is like getting back on track. The cases compare with, we've got multiple college kids in the same households. We've got fluctuating living situations, people moving in and out. We've got people's boyfriends that aren't present that weekend. We've got a delay in calling for help. So again, that article I read you from Wikipedia said that Noxie called for help. She did not call for help, and she called her boyfriend, and he came over. And then they were calling about like she had lost her cell phone the night before. So in Italy, you have two separate police. You have the police for everything that's not red rum, and then you have the police for red rum. So you have two different police departments. So they were calling about her lost cell phone, I think. I think her boyfriend used his cell phone to call the police to say that she'd lost her cell phone. And so then when they showed up about that, and then they saw that this was a crime scene, he stepped outside and pretended to be calling the police about the crime scene. And so it was very confusing because those police knew that they were there for a lost cell phone and that they were discovering a crime scene. And they also knew later from retrieving his cell phone records that he wasn't calling 911, that they were the police were the ones that instigated the other police getting there. So he said he was doing that, but he wasn't doing that. So there was some real BS going on, and I think the biggest BS in that case that everybody could identify was the two of them making out on the day of the initial interrogations, and then like the headstands and handstands and the cartwheels in the hall that Noxie was doing. Um, and then, she did a lot of bizarre antics all the way through the trials, and I won't get into that, but just she was, again, just loving all the attention and was completely psycho about it. So Liza, thank you. How the cases compared. So we have the knife, stabbings. We have living in a densely populated area. We have the delay. We have the boogeyman is one of my um, top comparisons, that it all got put on this one guy, Rudy, basically. In the end, it was all put on him. And he was there. He had something to do with it. I feel 100% certain about that. But he was painted as the boogeyman. Again, he was black. He had a history of, he had a criminal history of burglarizing. And he this whole case with the Idaho 4, what one of the things that bothers me the most is the way they're trying to make the criminal defendant into the boogeyman. And maybe he is. Maybe he is the boogeyman. Maybe he is just so dark and so evil, and he was able to pull all this off in 10 minutes by himself. It's just so hard for me to believe. And then I get so suspicious when there's things like the DoorDash delivery with an approximation of 4 o'clock. That's so vague. That can mean well before 4, that can mean well after 4. Approximately 4 o'clock is so vague. But then they pin down to the minute what time he was like doing his 3-point turn outside. Was that 4:06? According to somebody's doorbell camera or Ring doorbell. And then his car was speeding away at 4:20. So why do they have that time frame of the crimes being committed going all the way to 4:25 if they know he was driving away at 4:20? It just, these things are just inconsistent. They don't jibe, and it's important. It's important to see that 5 minutes that they are saying he left the scene. The boogeyman that they say did it is gone, but there's still 5 minutes of the crime being committed. What? And then why are they saying that Dylan's 19 when she's 21? And what the heck is the deal? I still can't find out. This prosecutor, the prosecuting attorney with the same last name as her. It's really bothering me. Maybe they're not related. I had not ever heard the name Mortensen myself before this case with Dylan Mortensen. And this guy, Stanley Mortensen, the prosecuting attorney from Post Falls, he's only been that prosecuting attorney either new this year, January 1st, or maybe the last few months of 2022. So is she related? Is Dylan related to Stanley Mortensen, the prosecuting attorney? I think that's important to know. And if not, then what a coincidence, their last names matching like that. And hoping for answers has never seen Heathers. Oh, you guys, Heathers is pretty awesome. If you like Winona Ryder and Christian Slater back in their heyday, when they were at the top. The movie Carrie was the first one. And, I was a little young for that. Thanks, Pam, for bringing that one up because I was only like 8 when that movie came out. So I never really watched it. It was too scary. I saw parts of it as I got older. And yeah, Hoping for Answers, the cheerleader story was crazy. Uh-huh. And Pam K, you were right. Carrie was the first one. Yeah, Sissy Spacek, who happens to be the mom in Bloodline, you guys. A lot of people love Sissy Spacek. And then the guy who played her husband in Bloodline, he passed away while he was filming it. Sam Shepard. It was the last thing he made. He was really popular too. Happy Friday. It seems like this is happening way too often. The tragedies like the Idaho 4. I mean, all of the missing kids, and then they're found unalived, and then they're just like, oh, accidental, no big deal, moving right along. Really evil oldie with Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, evil jealous sisters, called What Happened to Sweet Baby Jane, I think. So, yeah, I've heard of that. Ugh, creepy, creepy. Um, I have not seen it, but maybe I will, because, yeah, Joan Crawford and Betty Davis, awesome. Love that movie. There are rats in the cellar. It's a mind F, Pam K says. It is. It's absolutely a mind F. And yeah, the public deserves the transparency that's the law so that they can preserve their safety. It's all about public safety. So, yeah, law enforcement can withhold some information for the integrity of the case, and they need to reveal some information so that people can stay safe. Like, for instance, when this criminal defendant was roaming around the campus of Wazoo for a month after it happened. And for the first few days, they didn't know. He could have been doing all kinds of mayhem in those first few days. And again, in those 8 hours when the law enforcement was not being notified that these crimes had occurred and that these lives were taken. Were these people under the effect of illegal substances? Thank you, Liza. I'm so happy that you're here and you're just like right on point. Because we don't know. We know that they report a lot of drinking. We know that it's likely that they were using other substances. We know that the parents of 2 of the victims had illicit substance activity with criminal charges. So we do not know. We've all heard the rumors, but when I say substance abuse, for me, that includes alcohol. And then, especially, I know for a lot of people, it's not a big deal, but to me it is because I'm an addict and substances ruined my life. So I'm just so grateful to have my sobriety. And alcohol I didn't think was a problem for myself because it was never something that I was very much drawn to. But any substance, sugar, chocolate, shopping, YouTube, you got to be careful with your addictions. So, like cigarettes and alcohol and marijuana, those are all what they call like the gateway drugs, and they're slippery slopes. But when you ask if there were any people under the effect of illegal substances, anybody under the age of 21, alcohol is an illegal substance for. So, um, Xana and Ethan and Bethany were all under the age of 21. And then for some reason, Dylan we were being told was under the age of 21 when she is possibly 21, like Maddie and um, Kaylee. So, um, let's see. So many cases, I feel some people are just numb. It's hard to keep up. I like to say it's hard to keep a bandwidth to cover everything in my brain. Like I feel like I can cover the things that I'm covering, and it's challenging. I try to keep up. I try not to cross my wires and say the wrong names or misenunciate people's names. But it is really hard. And I catch a lot of mistakes like that when I'm watching my videos. So it's like I have to slow myself down so that I don't do that. But then when there's a new case, I'm just like, I can't. I just can't go with a whole nother new case. There is just too much information, and I want to get to the bottom of the cases that I focus on. I don't want to just scratch the surface. I want to get to the bottom of this the way I want to get to the bottom of Ms. Kylie Rodney's case. And Ms. Trinity Backus. Somebody sent me, was it an email, I think, yesterday? It could have been a comment. It could have been in one of the comment sections that Trinity Backus's mother and little half sister moved across the country recently. I had not heard anything about that. Have you guys heard anything about that? I thought that was a fascinating piece of information. And I don't want to imply that that indicates any guilt, because it could, but it also could be all kinds of reasons. It could have even been like the tragedy of what happened with Trinity, that the mother needed to get away from it. I mean, it's probably a lot of things, but I thought it was interesting. I definitely thought it was interesting. And again, if something happened to my kid, I wouldn't be leaving anything alone until I got all of the answers, all of them. And when I talk about Trinity Backus's case, and I talk about fake Auntie Ashley, prime suspect number one, and I want to kick Casey at Living Lake time credit for that, because he was the one who came up with the Auntie Ashley prime suspect number one. I think that Auntie Ashley's boyfriend is prime suspect number two. And I can't remember his name. I'm not going to try. Might have been Lucas. Logan. I got it. It was Logan. So Logan is definitely a prime suspect. And so are her unnamed roommates. And what in the heck Trinity was doing to stay there that night to begin with her friend, the whole story was crazy. Remember? Auntie Ashley was at her friend's house making Christmas posters, and she forgot that Trinity had texted her the week before, and when she pulled up and she saw her car, and then she remembered it all, and then she came in the house and it was a mess, and she said, and then this, that, and the other thing. I mean, her story was crazy, starting with the Christmas posters. I'm not kidding you. I still have no freaking clue what a Christmas poster is. And, we don't care about where you were and what you were doing. We don't care about she texted you to have the slumber party at your house last week and you forgot. What we care about is, how did she end up not alive anymore? And what did you see when you were in her company? And that story adds up to a big fabricated lie, in my humble opinion. So anyway, let's get this one. Let me get caught up on all of your stuff here. In my opinion, he wasn't alone. I could be wrong. It is just too short of a time frame. And that time frame of him maneuvering his car in a three-point turn until speeding away in his car, that's only 14 minutes, you guys. I'm pretty sure it was 4:06 when he was doing the three-point turn, and 4:20 when he was zooming away. 14 minutes. And again, at least half of them are awake. Maybe 5 of the 6 were awake. And was Bethany even there? Wasn't that in Harsh's video yesterday afternoon? He was asking that question, which I hadn't really heard, that maybe she wasn't there, or that there were some people questioning if she was even home. There was the 6th roommate that never moved in, and we don't hear anything about that. And maybe that's a nothing burger, so fine. Yeah, too short of a time frame. Absolutely, I agree. The inconsistencies are important. Reason why people need a great defense attorney. Well, and a defense attorney without any conflicts of interest, because that defense attorney that the criminal defendant has is no good. She might not be like friends with the people that she defended, but she was acquainted with them. She knew them well professionally. That totally takes her out of the running of being a candidate to defend him when his life is at stake. Again, that's a mind F from the courts, for them to try to sell it to the public like it's nothing, or I mean, That's gaslighting right there. There's just no way she should even be considered for the role. Not even considered. Thank you, Zena, for this elaborate and thorough comparison. Well, thanks, Caleb. I hope so. I hope I'm not like skimming the surface too much because I really like to, get into the issues. Sam Shepard did die. I'm sorry, Pam. Yeah, I know a lot of people love Sam Shepard. And so he played the father. You'll have to watch the Netflix mini series called Bloodline about the Rayburn family and their fancy B&B in the Florida Keys that's filmed in the Florida Keys, and it's all about, family secrets and a lot of fascinating, twisted criminal activity. And yes, Sam Shepard died in real life. So that was his last um, piece of work. That was his last thing that he filmed. And there's a lot here, there's a lot of riot of all high school since yesterday. Oh my goodness, in South Africa, Mrs. Yerzaza, one 18-year-old boy unalived himself because of his teachers were taunting him for repeating a grade. It's chaos. The main villain was flown away. Oh my, I have not heard about that at all. And somebody that I know that lives in South Africa, she just got back to visit a couple days ago, so I'll have to see if she knows anything about it. Um, what day did that happen? What day did the 18-year-old boy unalive himself? That's so sad. I heard today BK was hanging out on the Idaho campus just being a creepy guy. In addition to the 12 times that they say that he was stalking the house. Um, Idaho case really broke my heart, just like Collie Rodney. It's so hard to watch when you are a parent. So, you guys, let me say from what I know about crime and corruption, I can't imagine that one person, one student could get away with pulling off this big of a heist. Let's call it a heist, okay? I know a heist is usually like a thievery, like stealing jewels or bank robbery, but this was the stealing of four young people's lives. This was a grand heist. I can't wrap my brain around one student from the neighboring community pulling off a heist like that without any detection for days until days afterwards, and then not being arrested for 6 weeks. And then there's that whole like 12 hours where they lost him when he left his apartment to drive across country, and he went a route that they weren't expecting, so they couldn't find him for 13 hours. Again, what did he do in those 13 hours? He could have been disposing of all kinds of evidence. He could have been trying to commit more crimes, with or without his father's knowledge. Um, I'd say that law enforcement is really lucky that he didn't unalive anybody during that time because they could be held quite liable for losing track of their Brian. Okay. Um, it is heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And it just doesn't make sense. Dr. Latina live Trinity Bacchus autopsy part 2 tonight. Thank you, Caleb Lee. That is what we needed to know right there. I've been keeping an eye on her channel, trying to see when that was coming up. So excellent. I definitely plan on being there in the chat. Who answered the door when food arrived? And then 20 minutes later, 4 people in there are dead. In my opinion, we are missing something here. And that is why I'm so hung up on that DoorDash delivery. I'm so hung up on that. I want to know who brought it into the house. Was it Bethany? Was it Dylan? Was it Xana? Was it Ethan? Was it Kaylee? Was it the criminal defendant? Who brought the bag off of the front stoop into the house? And do we know for sure if the food that was delivered was eaten? Um, I don't know. Do you guys know? I mean, I've tried to glean that. It seemed to me that the food was half eaten. I know the bag is on the kitchen counter next to what we now know as a Starbucks half drink. And so we don't know when that Starbucks is from, if it came with that delivery from 2 different locations, or if it was from a different time in the day. But did Xana actually eat the food? Some of it, all of it? Um, oh, and I also wanted to include that I was speaking with my daughter who's turning 21, who's in college, about the last thing that Xana commented on TikTok, being queen. And she enlightened me, you guys. Queen is a thing, and maybe some of you knew this. I didn't know it. It's a thing that people say these days a lot, like, oh, queen, meaning like that's the jam or something to that effect. You're the jam. So, queen is a well used slang at this moment in time. And I still am very curious of why that just so happens to be her last comment when we've got all these jacks and the king and the queen, and actually two queens at least, and three jacks and one king. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up, you guys. So, yes, Dr. Latina, and who answered the door. And yeah, that time frame is why they're being so vague about when the food was left on the door stoop. Chilling in the food court. I don't agree with the issue people have with Ann Taylor. Attorneys have to deal with all kinds of people, and people are connected all the time. Well, I've worked in the courts, and in Seattle, where things were pretty backwards in my estimation when I was working there, there was a lot of weird stuff that would go on. But that would be absolutely 100% unheard of. So, um, different places, and Idaho does their own thing. And yeah, smaller communities, you get a lot more conflict of interest, and sometimes they are overlooked because you're in a small community. Like, let's say you're in Sitka, Alaska, where there's nobody around for thousands of miles. You're going to have to suck it up and deal with conflicts of interest in situations like that. But Idaho, Moscow is not like that. There's 12 others just in the state of Idaho. Well, they couldn't see due to visual snow. Happy Friday, Squirrely Burger, and everybody else. It makes me wonder if BK is buddies with some of the police. Well, we know that he had a contact, at least an internet contact with the police chief from the Pullman PD, who then went over to Wazoo PD when their whole administration was relieved of their responsibilities, shall we say. Um, so BK had that connection, and it seems to me that they did an internet, like a Zoom meeting, and then the follow-up email. I don't know that they ever actually met in person, that there's any documented evidence of that that's been released. More food after Grub Truck. Good question, but that was the Grub Truck was the other two girls, not Xana, but that's still a good question. Yeah, why didn't she ask those girls to bring her some food, silly girl? Makes me wonder. Okay. Receiving DoorDash would have the Xana door unlocked. Makes me think criminal defendant knew it was coming, maybe cloned phone, or knew a roommate. Always did on Saturday. Send off fishy to me. I like your comment, Annie Ruler. As usual, you're spot on it. And Liza, parents with illegal substances issues not important or comparable. If I have a death penalty case, the suspect need a Sixth Amendment right to be covered and fast if he drive to Idaho with no attorney. So I respectfully disagree, Liza, because again, I'm looking at this especially from the angle that there's something going on with law enforcement in Moscow with the drugs. Um, so yeah, the unalived students is a huge deal, and any criminal activity that their parents have had, especially Xana with her mother being arrested just 4 days later, it's just too close for comfort. And you don't even want there to be the optics that there might be a problem. I mean, optics are a huge issue. So even if there's not a conflict of interest, you don't want there to appear to be a conflict of interest. Again, the defense can really use that to have the whole thing a mistrial. Chinese spy balloon floating above Montana. Yeah, thanks, Caleb. I saw that on whose channel was it that was doing that? Was it Allegedly Innocent? It was somebody's channel who I really respect, and I was like, wow, what is that all about? It might not have been Allegedly Innocent. I don't want to give credit to the wrong channel. If you can remember what channel it was. Anyway, I'm going to get caught up here and then sign off until later today, you guys. It's just a lot of going in and going out, all kinds of stuff on a Saturday night, and then going in there and commit this heinous act. I agree, Dilly. BK in food court staring at the girls until they were creeped out. On that night or a different night, Pam? I'm not familiar with that. He was at the Idaho campus. Yeah. Great day, Caleb Lee. I'm putting my money on he won't wear no Van tennis shoes. Well, I just think that that's another huge red flag or bright flashing neon light. Why one latent shoe print when there were so many people coming and going? There had to be hundreds, if not thousands, of shoe prints in there, you guys. And again, it was found on the second um, collection of evidence. So that's suspicious too. I heard about that balloon too. Are they going to shoot it down? My money's on he ain't wearing Van tennis shoes, and he's got that black cover all, that black hat. He's wearing some kind of black lace up boots, no tennis shoes. That's such a good point, Dilly, because yeah, police all wear like basically kind of black combat type of boots, kind of like almost hiking boots. And they lace up. And so, yeah, that's a really good point. Makes me wonder why they are letting it happen. And apparently, it's not the first time. Squirrely Burger, are you talking about the Chinese balloon or are you talking about this whole mess? Enjoy your morning talks. Thank you. Good night, all. Pam K says. The reason why I brought it up, Alistair Grant, is why is it in U.S. airspace? Very good question, Caleb Lee. Absolutely. And what channel was it? Was it J? It was J is for Justice. I'm so happy when my brain works. Right? It was J is for Justice was the channel that was doing like a live about that last night. And I didn't get to see it, but I saw that she was doing it. I thought, wow, that's fascinating. Good night, Pam. Squirrely Burger says people thought he was a student. And are you talking about the criminal defendant at the grub truck, Pam? Let's see. When he was on Idaho campus. Okay. All right, you guys. Liza, let's see. Squirrely Burger. Yes, I'm talking about Chinese spy balloon. And Liza says, I'm looking at the side of the Court of Appeals. The law doesn't care about our feelings, fair or not. I totally agree, Liza. I'm speaking from experience working within the court in the King County Superior Court. So I was a county employee and I worked for the court. I also had a different job as a county employee that wasn't so much for the court, but sort of. It was the mental health crisis and commitment, crisis intervention, assessment and referral. So that was two separate jobs that I had in King County. So the one with mental health was mental health court, which was totally different than the criminal court, right? So I worked in the family court and I've testified as an expert witness. I've been involved in depositions and giving testimony. So I've been around a lot of court process and procedure from many different angles. I'm not saying that I have answers or that I know things. I do know some things, but I certainly am just like, the tip of the iceberg. So, absolutely what you said is 100% true. The law does not care about anybody's feelings. But sometimes the law is not fair, and that's when it needs to be looked at. Like right now, I don't think it's fair to Xana's family. I don't think it's fair to Maddie's family. I don't think it's fair to Kaylee's family or Ethan's family, what's going on with that conflict of interest. And I certainly don't think it's fair to the criminal defendant either. I think it's unfair across the boards, and I think that it could be a disaster for this whole process of trying to get some justice. That's my concern. I always speculated criminal defendant had planned cameras at 1122 King. I think that's a good possibility. I mean, everybody films everything these days. You get caught with a film like that, you're doomed. But films like that can be worth millions on the dark web. So, Squirrely Burger says Crime Circus dropped his other video when you first started yours. Oh, just now? How exciting. Then we need to go so I can check out that action. All right, you guys, we're at an hour and 20 minutes. So, yeah, I have been trying to wrap it up. So, thanks so much. Thanks for joining me. I hope you guys have a great day. I definitely am planning on seeing you this afternoon. Right now, I think I have it scheduled for 2 o'clock. I believe that that's what I put on there. And I will try to stick to that time. If I need to push it back, I will post that. So thanks so much. Have a great Friday. Take care of yourself and make sure you drink your water, get your protein, your fruits, your veggies, some exercise, fresh air, sunshine. The list goes on and on. Kindness, right? So relax and be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and demand that other people are kind to you and treat you well. So you just sometimes have to be a bitch, right? Sometimes being a bitch is all a woman's got to hold on to. Or one of my other sayings is, you say I'm being a bitch as if that's a bad thing. So I hope I didn't offend you by using the B word. If I did, let me know and we'll talk more about it later. And oh, Liza, I have to go. Sorry, like your channel very much. You find current issues to talk about. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your contributions too. And Caleb says, I am still not convinced that this criminal defendant was solo dolo. And signing off, Squirrels on Fire dropped 2. What? Awesome. All right, you guys. Oh, and don't forget, Dr. Latina tonight, the part 2 of Trinity Bacchus. Be there or be square. I'll see you later on today, hopefully. Thanks again. Have a great day. Always lovely to see you and sending you light, sending you love.